Before there was an Annabelle or even a Chucky, we had Robert the Doll. This true story is a direct inspiration to all cursed dolls. From its origins of voodoo magic to its real life misfortune, it seems that Robert is just one of the most sinister dolls ever created. I'm your host Andrew, and here are your top 10 Robert the Doll scary urban legends. Starting our list right, at number 10 we have Mysterious Origins. I think it's best to introduce this doll by sharing its disturbing origins. According to legend, in the early 1900s, a wealthy American family known as the Ottos committed an unspeakable offense against their young maid from the Bahamas. In an act of retaliation, the maid gifted the young Otto boy Eugene a dog named Robert who had been cursed by a voodoo priestess. In the following years, Eugene would be uncomfortably close to the doll. He would speak to it as if it was a real person and would become violently angry with anyone who just looked at it without his permission. Looking without permission meant that they were being disrespectful to Robert. And on top of that, most of the Otto family friends stopped visiting, claiming to have seen the doll move by itself or having heard it giggle and laugh in the dead of night. The family had enough and decided to send the doll to a museum where many people believe that visiting the doll is a reason for their personal tragedies. And it's to be noted that you should not view it without its permission or take any photos, or else misfortune will find you. At our number 9 spot, we have It's the Same Company that invented the teddy bear. As mentioned before, he was a handmade doll, but many don't know that Robert was built in the same company that created the first ever teddy bear, showing that evil and good can exist in the same place. But this kind of makes me think of teddy bears differently, especially when the company that made the teddy bear was also one who made one of the most cursed objects in the world. The company's name is Steve Company, which was located in Germany. They created the teddy bear in honor of Theodore Roosevelt, but for Robert, they didn't intend to release him at all and said he was a part of a window display of clown and gestures. Well, I guess the joke's on us. Stealing our number 8 spot, we have Robert is possessed. So it's widely believed that the doll is in fact possessed. They place the blame on the person who originally gave the doll to Eugene Otto, which was the servant who worked for the family. It's reported that she was abused and mistreated by the family, which led her to cursing the doll using voodoo and black magic. The doll would consume Eugene and would often be caught talking and painting with the doll until his death in 1974. The doll seemed to be possessed before his death, but after, it only got worse. And that's where we'll get on to our next point. On to our next point, at number 7 we have Myrtle Reuter. When Eugene Otto died in 1974, his doll and the house were the only things that he left behind. So eventually the artist's house was purchased by Myrtle Reuter, who was also granted the task to take care of Robert the doll. In addition to sourceless footsteps and giggling, Reuter and her visitors reported seeing Robert's facial expressions change whenever his owner Gene was mentioned. They also swore he had the ability to move between different rooms of the house without any help. And her 10-year-old daughter would find Robert in the attic where she claimed he was alive and trying to hurt her. After 20 years, she had enough and finally decided to donate Robert to the Fort East Martello Museum in Key West, Florida, where he still resides today. On to our next point, at number 6 we have Fort East Martello Museum. Now the doll haunts a small museum in Key West, Florida. It now haunts the entire building, and it's said that school children walking by outside report seeing Robert move from window to window. Staff at the museum claim that Robert has been found in different positions within his case. That footsteps have been heard around the museum at night with no apparent explanation for the noise, and that Robert's expression has been known to change from neutral to nasty in a blink of an eye. Visitors in the museum take precaution before meeting Robert. It's said that you need to speak to him in a polite way. You need to ask his permission to photograph him and to treat him with the most utmost respect. The walls around him are littered with apologies from guests for their behavior. That's literally how much people fear his ability to curse others. This is because many visitors who don't respect Robert claim they face dreadful misfortune, such as getting into accidents, losing relationship, illnesses and disease. So these apologies are actually for good reason. Right in the hump of our list, we have Don't Get Robert Mad. Now that we mentioned that he's currently in the Fort East Martello Museum, I think it's best to know that his terror didn't stop there. It only continued at a grander scale. One Reddit user named Dun Myth was with his wife and son when they decided to take a trip to Key West. They had heard about Robert in the past, so just because they were passing through, it just made sense to take a visit. The man's wife was superstitious and was very nervous when approaching Robert. On the other hand, the man was not nice about it and decided to tease her about it, which in hindsight, he knew that he pissed Robert off. Once they finished, and as they were leaving, they noticed that their car wouldn't start. It's also good to mention that this car was a luxury car bought new and was less than a year old. But when the mechanic came, the battery connectors just crumbled because they were that corroded. The mechanic claimed he had never seen anything that bad. This led the husband to walk back to the museum to apologize to Robert. I know, creepy stuff. All the way at our number 4 spot, we have Robert moving his foot. A lot of people decide to record Robert as they visit the museum. Many don't really record anything supernatural, and besides, they are usually stressed because of the conditions needed to visit Robert. As mentioned already, you need to ask permission to take pictures or videos or even talk to the doll. If not, people claim bad luck and negativity in their lives. So here's a video of someone showing Robert the doll. Although it's unconfirmed if they ask for permission, it's super eerie the way Robert just moves. Right at our number 3 spot, we have Robert inflicts pain. Just one more museum encounter for our list, I promise. Reddit user Taiji Lu talked about his tragic encounter with Robert the doll. He was super excited to see the doll. A kid in the candy shop is how he described it. He reported feeling heavy the moment he was in the same room as Robert, and he even claimed to see apparitions in the corner of his eyes. The user took a photo of Robert, and once he started to tell the story to one of his friends, the atmosphere changed and he felt sick to the stomach. As they rode back home on their bikes, the kid would fall off and dislocate his knee, and to this day, he would still blame it on Robert the doll. We're almost done, and at our number 2 spot, we have Ozzy Osbourne. I know it's a bit random, but I wasn't surprised that Ozzy Osbourne had a connection to this cursed doll. Just in case you've been living under a rock, Ozzy Osbourne took over the 70s with his heavy metal vocals and personality. In this series, Ozzy and Jack's World Detour, they decided to pay a visit to the doll. During the visit, Ozzy and his son did apologize and ask for permission, but the doll just didn't seem fazed.
Do you believe in that, Bruce?
I think there's some weird
superstition.
After this occasion, Ozzy had a terrible 2019. He took many serious falls, causing many major bruises and cuts. He underwent neck surgery, he got an infection in his hand, and was hospitalized for a flu. He blamed all of this on the cursed doll.
Sorry, Robert.
Sorry, pardon.
So if Ozzy Osbourne speaks, we listen. At our number 1 spot of our list, we have an inspiration from Chucky. One of the most influential horror films of all time is 1980's Child's Play. This starred the infamous killer doll Chucky. Even though he isn't a real person, he is based on a real figure. And you guessed it, it's Robert the doll. These stories have very many similarities. Like Robert, Chucky was a gift to a little boy who at first saw Chucky as his best friend and primary companion. Chucky's tale also parallels Robert's because they are both living dolls who cause chaos wherever they go. Both these dolls are just entities of mischievous deeds. So do you think you have the strength to see this doll? Cause I want to take a flight to Florida and visit this museum to test it out firsthand, but I'm not sure that's a good idea. So leave us a comment with your thoughts about Robert. I'm your host Andrew, and I hope you have a scary day.